Hey guys, welcome to the first video of my web development for absolute beginners series. This entire series is meant for anyone wanting to learn basic web design and web development, and there's absolutely no prerequisites. I'm teaching this course as if I'm talking to someone that's never written a line of HTML before, so don't worry about having any kind of prior web development knowledge. This will be an ongoing course or ongoing series, and each video will focus on a different topic. So in this particular video, we're going to be focusing on HTML only. Then we'll move on to CSS and possibly some JavaScript. I also want to show you how to upload a website to the internet. Alright, so just a couple things before we begin. So I want to stress that this course and this video, the series, is for beginners. Okay, if you've been a subscriber for a while, I can almost guarantee that you're going to know everything in this video and in this series. Well, maybe not in the series, but in this video at least. If you've been building websites, then you're going to know the basics. I'm doing a series like this because I don't really feel like I have a place to start on my channel for absolute beginners, people that really don't know anything about web development. So hopefully my advanced programmers that have subscribed to me can understand that, and just know that this isn't going to be an ongoing thing for the next 20 videos. It's just this series. All right. Also, there's going to be little to no CSS in this particular video. That's going to be covered most likely in the next video. And just to warn you, HTML without CSS is very, very ugly. We're not focusing on the style at all here. We're focusing on HTML syntax. All right, so we will be sticking to HTML5. I don't want to confuse anybody by throwing in standards from HTML4 or XHTML or any other derivative, anything like that. So we're going to stick to HTML5 only. So we will be working with examples. We'll be building a cheat sheet, but we're also going to take a look at some slides along the way. All right, now you're not going to learn HTML or anything for that matter in 5 or 10 minutes. I've actually seen videos called, learn HTML in 5 minutes, and that's just absolute bullshit. If you're going to be a web developer, you have to be patient, and you have to really enjoy learning, because you're going to be learning even when you land a good job. You're going to be learning every single day. So try and be patient. Try to follow along. I know people can get a little aggravated with videos that are over 25 minutes. But if you're that impatient where you can't watch an hour-long course, then you're probably in the wrong profession. And I don't mean to sound harsh or anything, but I don't want to steer anybody down the wrong path. And I really do mean that wholeheartedly. Alright, so enough with the preface. Let's go ahead and get started. So what is HTML? It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And a lot of people just starting out don't realize that HTML is not a programming language at any level. It's a markup language for creating web pages and documents. Okay, HTML documents. One of the key elements of a programming language is logic. So you can have things like conditionals where you can say, if this is true, then do this. HTML, however, doesn't have any of that. HTML is used to just display and format elements of a web page. That may be a text paragraph or a heading, a bullet list, or an image, or many other things. It's strictly presentational. Just try to remember that. There's no logic. There's no actual programming. So an example of a programming language would be JavaScript or PHP or C#. These are intricate languages, and they're responsible for things like connecting to a database, for like an online store, something like that, user login, dynamic functionality, things like that. Now, with that said, that doesn't make any programming language more important than HTML. In fact, if you're getting into web development, HTML, at least in my opinion, is much more important, because HTML is the building block of the web. Every single site that you see outputs HTML to the browser, no matter what kind of advanced programming it uses on the back end. All right, and you can build a website using just HTML and CSS. CSS, of course, is a styling language, and we'll get into that in another video. But you can have just an HTML site without any JavaScript or any PHP or anything like that. It will be purely presentational. You can't have like an online store or anything with just HTML, but you can have a basic business website with information about the company and so on. Now, it is harder these days to get a job with just HTML and CSS knowledge, but you can do it. There are still companies that are purchasing websites that are strictly presentational. Alright, so I don't want to spend too much time on this stuff, so let's move on to what we actually need to get started. So to get started building websites, you only really need two things. You need a browser to view the HTML, and you need a text editor to write the HTML. Now don't worry about what kind of computer you have. If you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux, it doesn't matter as long as you have these two things. Everything that I'm doing in this series and in this video is completely cross-platform. So for a browser, it can be whatever you want. I'd highly suggest Google Chrome. It's the fastest, and in my opinion, it's the best for any web developer. But of course, you can use Firefox or Safari, even Edge. Just please, for God's sakes, don't use Internet Explorer. If you're using something less than Windows 10, please download a different browser. All right, so you can also use any text editor you want. Which one is up to you. You could even use Windows Notepad, but I wouldn't suggest it. You want to use something with line numbers and syntax highlighting, stuff like that. I'm going to be using an editor called Sublime Text, which is available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So feel free to download it. I'm going to show you where and how to download it. I'm using Sublime Text because it's very simple. It's very light. When I'm working with other technologies and languages, I usually use something called Atom or Visual Studio Code, but I think that those are overkill for what we're doing here. So before we move on, let's go ahead and install Sublime Text so that we can start writing HTML. Alright guys, so you want to go to www.sublimetext.com to get this program if you want it. If you want to use something else, that's fine. Now this program is free to try. If you want to keep using it, I'd suggest buying a license. If you use it without a license, it doesn't have any limitations or anything like that. You're just going to get a pop-up every once in a while that says you should probably buy a license. Alright, so let's go ahead and download this. I'm going to click the big download button here. Alright, so once that's done, we can go ahead and open it. It's just going to be a simple installer for Windows, and of course you can grab this for Mac or Linux. So let's go through this. Default location is fine. I'm going to choose to add it to the Explorer context menu. What that'll do is it'll allow us to right click on an HTML file and say open with Sublime Text. So we definitely want that checked, and then we're just going to install. Alright, so it should be all set. Let's click finish. And now we should be able to open it up. I'm just going to search for it down here in my search bar, if it opens. And let's just see right here, Sublime Text 3. Okay, there's also Sublime Text 2, but 3 obviously is the newer version. Alright, so this is what a text editor looks like. I'm not going to go through all the features. I just want to strictly focus on HTML syntax. So now that we have our editor installed, we can go ahead and we can start to create our HTML file. So one great thing about HTML is we don't need any kind of special server or hosting company to write and test HTML. You can simply create a file right on your computer, you can give it a .html extension, and you can open it up with your browser. Now when your site is ready to deploy to the internet, you will need to buy a domain name, you'll need a hosting package, and then you'll need to upload everything to your web host, okay? And I'll get into that in a later video. But for now, we can build our site or build our cheat sheet locally without that stuff. So to create an HTML file, it has to have an HTML extension. You can call it whatever you want, you just have to end it with .html. This will allow it to be displayed correctly in a web browser. Now one thing to remember is that your home page should always be called index.html. If you go to a domain like, let's say, www.something.com, and you upload a file called index.html, that's the file that's going to show on that root domain. Okay, if you upload a file, let's say about.html, that's going to show when you go to something.com/about.html. So the index file will always be the root file or the home page, unless of course you're messing with server settings and you change it, but by default that's the behavior. It's going to look at index.html. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and create our first HTML file. Now I'm going to put this in a folder, so I'm going to create a folder and I'm going to call this HTML cheat sheet. Okay, and then inside that folder, let's create a new file by going to new text document, and we're going to call this index.html. Okay, and we'll just say yes, we want to change the file extension. And notice that mine has a Chrome icon by default because Chrome is my default browser and that's what opens up the HTML files. Yours may be different. Now, if you're using Windows, you may have an issue where you don't see the .html. Okay, if you're not seeing that, what you want to do is you want to go to View, Options, Change Folder and Search Options. All right, you want to go to View, and then down here you want to uncheck Hide Extensions for Known File Types. Okay, You want to make sure that's unchecked and then click apply. And then you're going to see the extension, and it may say something like index.html.text. Just make sure you get rid of the .text. All right. I'm sure most of you know that, but just in case there's people that don't. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to open this with Sublime Text. So we can actually just right click and say open with Sublime Text. Let me just bring it over. It opened up on a different screen. And that's going to open it up. You can see up in the tab it says index.html. Now another thing you could have done is you could just go to File, Open, and you could find that on your computer, that HTML file, and open it. All right, so now that we have that open, what I'm going to do is just type in hello world here, just text, no tags or anything yet. And you want to make sure you save it, so you can either go to File, Save, or you can just hit Control S, which is what I would suggest. It's much quicker, and then it saves. Okay, now what we want to do is open it up. So let's go ahead and let's open it up with Chrome, and that's the default. So all I have to do is double click, and then that's going to open it up in the Chrome browser, and you can see it says hello world. All right, so even if we put just text in here with no HTML tags at all, it's still going to show the text in the browser. All right, now what I'm going to do is just snap this to the edge here, and then we're just going to open up Sublime Text on this side. Okay, I'm going to make Sublime a little bit bigger than the browser for now, just so we can see everything, all the code. And I just want to talk a little bit about HTML tags. So an HTML tag is the basic building block of any web page. Different tags format the way that information and text is displayed. So element names are surrounded in angle brackets or greater than and less than symbols. And tags usually come in pairs. One's a start tag, one's an end tag. If we look over here, we have the start tag, the end tag, and then we have content in between. All right, in this example here, we have about us as the content or the text, and it's surrounded in H1 tags, which stands for heading 1. And I'm going to get into the specific tags later on. All right, here's another example with a paragraph tag, and we just have the text, this is a paragraph. Now notice with the BR tag here, there's no opening and close, it's just one tag. This is called a self-closing tag, and these are basically tags that don't have any content within them. Okay, notice that the slash is actually after the element. Okay, so BR slash, it's after. And this is an XHTML style, so we don't really need to do this in HTML5. You can if you want, but you can just use simply BR, okay? And BR is a line break tag, so it's just basically going to push it down a line, and there's no reason to have any content like this inside of a line break, so that's why it's considered a self-closing tag. All right, now there's a very specific structure to an HTML document. So this is a quick diagram I just want to look at. You'll see that everything is surrounded in HTML tags. We have the start and ending tag. Inside that we have a head area and we have a body area. Now the head has nothing to do with the output that's in the browser. The head has things like the page title. It has things like links to CSS files and JavaScript files that you want to use. Metadata such as the description and keywords, things like that. The description and keywords are actually used by search engines like Google so that it knows some more information about what's actually on the web page. All right, and then in the body we have the actual markup that's going to display in the browser, so headings, text, images, things like that. Now this is an example of a very simple web page. Notice that we have the HTML tags, the head, the body. We also have this thing at the top. This is a doc type, and it's not technically an HTML tag. It's just a declaration, and it should always be the first thing on the web page. And what this does is it tells the browser what type of HTML this is actually written in. Now this is the standard doc type for HTML5. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other ones. So as I said, this is HTML5. If you were using HTML 4.0 or 4.01, it would have to be a doc type like this, and you start getting into different types, whether it's strict or transitional, and it can get very complicated. Same thing with XHTML. I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to confuse you guys. We're going to just stick with HTML5. Just know that other doc types are a lot more complicated.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, follow, and subscribe to my channel for more tips, tutorials, and insight about programming. Stay tuned for more content and see you in the next video.